Hello, I'm Georgie Bingham. Welcome to the Football Manager Files, where today we're talking to something of a Premier League stalwart when it comes to management. Alan Pardew's with me. I'm very glad you got the directive on glasses today. I'm very pleased that Wardrobe were able to furnish you with them. We're going to talk about your career as a manager, starting with, first of all, your career as a footballer. Now, age 26, I think you became pro and were part-time and non-league and worked as a glazier. You maybe had a different background to some other players that start younger in football. How did that route influence your values and your approach to the game and maybe heighten your desire to be part of football?
Well, I think the most important part of that process of coming into late was the fact that, you know, I felt I'd missed the boat, the professional boat, so to speak. Because the last club I was at Yeovil was kind of as professional as you could probably be without it being professional. So not day-to-day training in the evening, playing 2-3 times a week, etc. So to come into the professional environment at that stage was always going to be make an impact on me because I wanted to make sure I maximised that chance. So I really attacked it from day one, and but I was hardened. It wasn't. I'd been through the youth, the young professional, so to speak, in non-league, a much harder environment, I would suggest. Tougher because you're playing with men. I was playing at men when I was 15, 16. And their humour, their sarcasm, their praise, their criticism, much sharper. So when I come into pro football, nothing surprised me, nothing really fazed me. So I had a kind of like free run at it to go, okay, let's just deal with everybody who's involved in it and be able to manage them and get the best out of myself, and that's what I tried to do. But it was fundamental in my makeup because every game I entered was like a challenge for me, and I took that right to the end.
Which managers have influenced you most during your career, would you say, and why?
Well, I think managers that you work with obviously is going to probably be the biggest influence on you. And Steve Coppell come at my time when I'd had non-league managers who had asked different things of me. And this particular manager, who had been a young manager, I think Steve was only 31, 32 at the time. You know, he'd finished his career early, so he was a manager very young. And he was very kind of, you know, he was on an even keel. I was literally only 4 or 5 years younger than him. So it was a strange kind of feeling, but of course, because of his pedigree, playing at Man United and the success with England, I was all ears. So he was a major influence on my playing career. But my managerial style probably was different to Steve's, and the way I focused and wanted to play the game of football was different. I wasn't actually keen on Steve's tactics to a degree. It actually suited me as a player, so kind of weird. Why? Because if he had played the game that I want to play, I probably wouldn't have been in the team because I wanted to play a more technical game. So it was about learning the process of technical football that I tried to educate myself through coaching badges and watching and observing other teams. And I probably, the biggest influence in my formative years as a manager was Manchester United and Alex Ferguson's team of 2 wingers on the front foot, trying to dominate games physically, mentally and technically. And that was probably the biggest influence on me from a managerial outlook. But there's been many down the years, and you learn all the time. I mean, I could list quite a few now since I've become a manager. The most prominent of those probably being Mourinho in terms of his setup of his team to win, and without any quarter given or taken. So, yeah, numerous managers.
And how would you describe your style of leadership?
My style of leadership is, I don't know what my style of leadership is to sort of try and put my finger on it, because that's quite a complicated question. Leadership actually, I think, is about showing a group that you can cope with success, failure, disappointment, euphoria with a pretty even keel, and that you're used to all of it. I think that's good leadership. So I try to do that. I'll never let my team get carried away when we're on a winning run, and I don't get too despondent if we're on a losing run. I try to keep the process of what we do quite simplistic but thorough, so that everybody knows what their job is on entering on a Saturday afternoon. So good leadership, I think, is about communication. I'm a pretty good communicator, and a lot of that is due to perhaps my experience as a player, particularly through the non-league. There's not anyone that phases me. There's not anyone that I don't feel comfortable with. And then my message is clear. So leadership is a complicated question, but somewhere in there is the answer.
Now, you came into your managerial career at a time when suddenly managerial sackings increased in frequency. Did you, at the time when you started, think that 18 years later you'd still be right at the top end of it?
Well, I don't know, because I always felt, even as a player, that I'd be a better coach stroke manager than a player. So I did expect me to do a better career professionally as that's on that side of it, if I got the opportunity. Now, the luck was that I got an opportunity early. One from a coach giving me the job as assistant manager at Reading, and then I got the caretaker job, and then eventually the manager's job through the goodwill of the board there, John Medeski and his board. So I got in early. It never crossed my mind that the ratio of sackings was going up. It never even figured in my thinking that I was going to get the sack. It was at that point I was going to be a success, and there was nothing else that was going to stop me to be a success. Of course, life doesn't work out like that, and I've been sacked 2, 3 times, maybe 4, I can't quite recall. You enter into that world, but as you get more experience, you understand that a lot of the decisions sometimes are made not always because of your performance, sometimes because of financial restraints, sometimes because a new agenda is needed, sometimes because of new owners. So we all, managers, have to be very resilient, and you have to have, and you mustn't carry any bitterness from one job to the next. Otherwise you're going to be hampering your skills. So when I started at Reading, I didn't fear the sack, didn't bother me. When I got the sack for the first time at West Ham, I dealt with it okay, because I got a job 3 weeks later at Charlton, so it wasn't too difficult. But you do have to kind of trust your skill set and not let the past damage you going forward. If anything, let it kind of evolve you into a better manager. And that's what I've tried to do, use the experiences, good or bad, to become a better manager.
You've mentioned twice about learning in management. How do you continue, how do you ensure that you continue to evolve in your managerial career? How do you keep pace with the game as it is today compared to how it was?
Well, the game moves very fast, and you got to stay with the pace of the game. And the managers who are sustainable, the ones that go on and on, change with the game. I remember Alex Ferguson telling me a story of Roy Keane coming to see him at the end of his career, saying that he had changed. It was almost like you've changed, and I don't really like the new Alex Ferguson, but Alex Ferguson reminded him, of course, that you have to change. The game changes, and you have to change with it, and your skill set changes, and you have to be better nowadays at analysing games. You have to be better at setting your teams up. You have to be at the forefront of sports science. You have to manage a huge army of people now at a football club. Staff used to be 5, now they're 20, sometimes 30 if you're Manchester City. Just staff members, and they bring enough problems, let alone players. So it's about a bigger process, and as you go along, picking up the skills and not and not forgetting that you need to keep learning. And even myself, as old in the tooth as I feel, and I've definitely looked at today, the age thing is a good thing if you use it wisely, because of course you have more experience and more wisdom. But it's only if you're going to use it to the best or utilise it to the best, otherwise it's going to drag you down. And I've seen that with managers. I think they get scarred by the game for whatever reason, and it drags them down and it takes away their power. So try to grow all the time, most important.
Well, we're mentioning age. How do you go about motivating a modern day footballer? Because as you get older, the players that you manage, the age bracket of footballers is still the same.
Yeah, you do need to kind of keep your ear to the floor, so to speak, of what drives them. And as you say, younger players have changed from when I first went in to now. In my opinion, they're softer now. You need to be a little bit more careful with them. They have sometimes an overbearing agent, parent, PR person that they employ themselves, or an agency, and all these people are kind of sometimes protecting them and model colonying them to some degree. So my job is to cut through all that and be honest with them and tell them exactly where they're at, what they're doing, what they can't do, what they can do, and make sure, particularly the way you conduct yourself, that you're letting them show that you're moving with the times. And that doesn't necessarily mean to say that I should grow a beard and wear drainpipe trousers and look all trendy. It's about understanding where their worlds are and utilising my world to integrate to theirs, and not just say, well, this is my world, come into my world. I have to go into their world. So it's kind of a two-way process.
Who motivates the manager?
Well, that's sometimes a question that needs to be understood a little bit more by chief executives and chairmen. They sometimes ignore us managers when we are having a difficult time. Can we help? Is there anything we can do? Is a great line from your board. Because you do need help at times, and you want to feel that you're being helped, because it can be quite lonely. I've been at clubs where it goes very, very quiet when you start losing games, and that's very unnerving, and actually you do feel quite alone. But I've also been at clubs where that message has been really good and helpful. Of course, your family and friends are important to you because you need to keep your spirit up, but you must always understand as a football manager or a CEO of a big company, because I think the two kind of marry to a degree, because that's how big this job is because of the media. This job wouldn't be a particularly big job in the scheme of the world, but of course the media make it a massive job because we are the spokesperson for everything that goes on. So there's a huge impact on us with the media. And that side of it, you have to be very, very careful that you are representing the group, the team, the club in the correct manner and message, and be on message. And that's important that you know what that is, because the chairman's message might be slightly different. Sometimes those messages are not the same. So it can be difficult. But the motivator who motivates the manager is the desire inside you to win and improve and be resilient. And if you haven't got them in the Premier League, you won't survive.
How important is it to understand players' individual needs and motivations?
I think anybody who manages people, whether you're in Kentucky Fried and you've got 4 people in there, you need to understand what they're like, what they're about, how to get the best out of them. You always understand that some people are motivated visually, they're motivated sometimes by emotion, they're motivated sometimes by hearing positive aspirations and confidence. So you kind of try and use your experience to try and touch the players you can touch, and sometimes leave alone when it can't be touched. Some players, when they're out of the team, actually would rather not have any interaction with me for a day or a couple of days. And I understand that as well. I've been that as a player. You know, manager's left me out, or he's obviously not. I'm not in his thinking. I want nothing to do with him for a little while. I want to, you know, get myself together, and then hopefully the manager will look at me in a different light, and then I'll start communicating with him. So you get a bit of that, and you have to understand that that is part of human process. Of sometimes you go, okay, it's not happening for me at work. I'm gonna have to deal with this. I'm gonna have to put it right, and then get yourself going again, and then the manager can kick back in again. So you have to kind of recognise when they're kicking back in as well. Some days a player, if I leave a player out on a Saturday, a really tough decision, for example, I might lose the player for a day. I might lose the player for 2 days. I might lose him for a whole week. I might lose him for 3 weeks. Now, that's really troublesome. I would be looking at myself if I had lost a player for that long. But you're going to lose them from time to time. It might only be an hour, and you can get them straight back on board. So you have to understand the player, understand the character, understand the individual, and that can be happening to staff as well. Staff are overlooked at times in my world, because you just expect them to carry on doing what they're doing, but they need motivation. You need to keep them inspired, and I think it's about changing and making the format different, changing the agenda, changing the routine, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but change is good.
You're currently managing a club that you have a history at. You memorably scored a goal that in a FA Cup run back in, 1990.
You had to look there to check, didn't you? Yeah.
I did.
That's sad.
You memorably scored a goal for Palace that took you to the FA Cup final in 1990. Now, when it came to your appointment at this club, how important do you think your understanding of the club's culture was in terms of your appointment here?
Strange, really, because I never even thought about being a manager here, ironically. I always looked at it with love, because of course I played here and had great times here, but I never actually thought I'd manage here, which was bizarre, really, considering the world I'm in, that would make sense. But the timing and the way it kind of evolved and the way it arrived for me just all felt right, and I didn't really think too much about understanding the people and the characteristics of this football club too much at that time. So we're only talking 40 months ago. That didn't enter my mind. It just felt right to take the job. And then it kind of kicked in a little bit after an initial period of success that this isn't going to last, Kind of talk to myself, this isn't going to last. And although everybody loves me and it's all great, an old hero coming back and he's a great manager and all that, I know it's not going to last. It worries me. I can't say it doesn't worry me. And we're on a tricky run at the moment in the league. Obviously we've done great in the cup, but the league run at the moment, it's a bit uncomfortable, and it makes me kind of feel like I don't want to spoil it, the feeling I have here. So it makes me work harder, I guess. I don't know, but it motivates me to a degree. So I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing.
When your team is playing well and you've clicked and your team is surging, how does it feel?
Well, I think when you get on a winning run, you get momentum, and you hear managers, football managers, Premier League managers talk about momentum. It's massive. We call it this massive ingredient, but we actually don't know what it is sometimes. It's your team's playing well, everyone feels good, and you got that momentum, and you get it in different periods, and then it goes away, and then you kind of ask yourself, where did that go away? Where did that go? What happened? Sometimes you can put your finger right on it, and I can for us. This season, we got 2 massive injuries in the same game, and it affected us. We couldn't kind of get ourselves back to where we were, and we lost this thing called momentum. Because you can be a good team, but you can be a good team with momentum. You're a good team with momentum. You're a great team for a period. I'm not saying a great team to win the league, but a great team for a period. That's why manager of the month in the Premier League is not always Jose Mourinho or Pellegrini or Arsene Wenger. It's different managers, because the team have been great for a month. They've been good, and then they've got momentum. boom. And then that ingredient, that 6 weeks can keep you in the Premier League, get you into Europe, get you to a cup final, surge you up the league and get you a load of attention in this business that we're in. So what you're looking for is to gain momentum all the time, and anything you can cling on to and try and get that momentum. And momentum in this division is everybody knowing their job, everybody doing it automatically, and having a platform to use your imagination. People forget that this is not a game of chess. We coaches make it a kind of game of chess, but then you have to use your imagination. So from the chessboard, it becomes something different. So it's not about logic. If it was about logic, the betting companies would never lose. It's not about logic, but it's about having the pieces in the right position, and then the imagination can flow from there. And when you're feeling good, when you have momentum, you have more imagination on the pitch. I can talk about a couple of my players. Johan Kabaya will try a pass on the back of the defence rather than perhaps one that's safe inside or to his wide player. He'll try and backspin it behind the centre half, or Yala Balassi will, instead of taking the player on and passing it simple, will get it and immediately in a tight area, burst out of that tight area and take somebody else on with confidence, flowing through his veins. So it is about giving the players a platform and an environment where their imagination can come out and be natural footballers, which most of them, of course, are.
And in contrast, when results are hard to come by, how do you manage expectations and the inevitable kind of highs and lows that come with football?
Well, that's the tough part of this business, because the tough part is when you're losing to break that run, and what you're looking for is to find a solution and offer players a solution out of it, and try to get a game where you can get the tactical format right for where you are. Because if you're not playing with confidence, there's no point in really opening the pitch up and saying, okay, let's go and really open our wings today and go and flow, because that is not going to happen. Your team isn't in that place. You've got to kind of bring them back, centralise them and go, okay, from this solid base, let's get something. And then as we get the next result, we can grow and grow into that team that can cope with having a big open pitch. And, I watch teams, the great teams like Bayern Munich and Barcelona, and they have fantastic technical players. And these players have great experience and great knowledge of how to utilise a big pitch all the time, every week. And one day it'd be nice to manage at that level, but when you're managing and you're fighting the big boys, you have to kind of work to the limitations of your group, and a bit like a matador with the ball. You've got to sometimes be the matador and let the ball keep coming, and then try and find a weakness to go forward. So all those questions. And of course, sometimes we're the ball. We're a dominant team to, say, a team from the Championship or a team lower in the division. We've got to be a different type of team. So trying to give them different ideas to win the game and stimulate them.
Final question for you. What advice would you give to young coaches embarking in their career in terms of management?
Well, the easy part is saying, I want to be a manager, I want to be a coach. The harder part is putting it into practice, because I think I had done all my coaching badges that I could possibly do at 31. Then they brought in the pro license. I did that as soon as I could get on it. You need to really gather information if you want at the outset of being a manager. Whether you have been injured at 23 and your football career is finished and you're starting as a coach at 23, or you're starting as a coach at 17, 16, you've decided that the game is, you don't want to play it professionally, you don't have no interest, you want to coach, then try and get as much information, try and get as much knowledge as possible. You'll be surprised how much knowledge people like myself at the position we're in will give. My door's pretty open. People write to me and I will give them a response. Like most managers in the Premier League, coaches naturally have to be giving people. Otherwise, you can't be a coach. If you're not going to give your information, if you're not going to help people, if that's not naturally in you, then don't become a coach. So you need to have that kind of personality, and you have to have an open mind, and those two things are probably the most important. And the open mind is things like we're doing here, where the same for me as a Premier League manager. I will go and interests me to see other genres, other sports, other way companies are run, things that they do. I'm always looking for ideas. You know, you hear David Brailsford, this famous cycling coach, talking about marginal gains. The thing that he really got right was the quote marginal gains, because really and truly it's just an extra. Everybody's looking for an extra. We've always, ever since the time memorial, we've been looking for an extra way of doing it. So you're looking for that little bit that gives you an advantage, and you have to keep unearthing them. But for young coaches, young managers, you have to have a giving nature. You have to have a very understanding nature as well, because your mindset of how somebody should respond to you might not necessarily be the way that the player or the person you're coaching wants to respond. So you mustn't have expectations that everyone's going to be like on time. They're going to be super motivated every day, and they're going to come in and say, yes, hello boss, here we go. It isn't like that. You know, some people are different, and you have to manage them, and so you have to always consider where the person is when you're coaching and managing. And if you do that, and you have plenty of education, plenty of experience, then then hopefully you become a manager or a coach that everybody admires and looks up to.
Alan, thank you very much for your time. That's all from this edition of the Football Manager Files. If you'd like more information or content, then all the information you'll need is on your screen right now.